Happy Sabbath, everyone. We're very pleased to have as our guest speaker today Dr. Geof, and he has come all the way from Willits, which is about an hour and 45 minutes from here. So we're very grateful that Dr. Teo is here giving us the message this morning. I first met Dr. Teo on the Philippine mission trip, and it was a pleasure to meet him and his church members. A team from the Willits Church came, and I really enjoyed talking with Geof, getting to know him personally. But at that time, I didn't know Dr. Teo is so vastly educated and experienced in many forms of ministry. So Dr. Geof Teo is currently the Director of Pastoral Care at Adventist Health, Ukiah Valley, offering profound insights into emotional and spiritual well-being. He is a psychoeducation expert, author, chaplain, and ordained minister. So as a chaplain at the Adventist Hospital there in Ukiah, he provides spiritual care to all patients, not just Christians, but all patients that come in and that seek support, counseling, and just perhaps some of them just want someone to talk to, not necessarily prayer or words from the Bible. His book is called Unshakable: Cultivating Resilience in Challenging Times. It's a very profound book, and he's going to share a little bit about it this morning in the message. With expertise in pastoral care and human resilience, he offers insights on cultivating resilience, drawing from his extensive experience, the biblical wisdom, and his roles as a devoted husband, father, and cycling enthusiast. I saw his advanced level of cycling from his postings on Facebook. Very exciting, and cycles a lot. His wife is currently at Andrews University visiting their daughter. They have a son and 2 daughters, so his wife is not with us today, but we're so grateful that Dr. Teo can be here sharing God's word. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Yim. The first time, just like what he said, the first time we met is in the Philippines, and I'm excited to see him again because, Pastor Yim, just want to let you know, I haven't told you yet. For some reason, you look much more handsome today. And he said, you know what, I have an update, so I'm looking forward to the update that he's going to share with me later. So I'm excited. How's everybody doing? Thank you very much for the song, Let God Be God. How do we do that? How do we just let God be God? I think if we just know how to do that, maybe we're already home, right? In heaven. Okay. I'm not quite sure if this is going to work, but I'll start anyway. So okay, there you go. Yes. We love truth, right? The truth sets us free, as the scripture says. I'm a chaplain, and I also offer psychoeducation, so maybe the words and the principles you'll be hearing today might be a little different from your pastors or whatever pastors you've been listening to, but I'm happy to at least contribute to whatever you already have as far as your relationship with God, with yourself, and with others is concerned. From the psychoeducation perspective, the truth is not just what we read from the scriptures. The truth is very much affected by the lens we wear. That's why many people read the same Bible but end up having different interpretations. And sometimes having different interpretations nowadays cause church to divide. And sometimes we call that church growth, but I think we're just rationalizing, right? Because sometimes we can't be with another person whose set of lenses are quite different from the one we wear. But just want to let you know that we live in an imperfect world. I think it's a little bit too much for us to have a certain level of confidence and say, what I see is right. And if you can just sit right next to me and see the way I see things, your world will be much, much better. As a chaplain, the first thing we would like to abandon is that arrogance. Because when we sit with patients, we would like to sit and see how they see the world instead of inviting them how we see the world. Because their world, as a person who is in crisis, is a very different world from someone who may be thinking that I'm the interventionist, I have the answer, I'm the expert, I have the answer. And if you could just see it from my lens, I guarantee you'll have a better life. I mean, a person who is in crisis is having a hard time climbing up to sit right next to you and see the world from your end. By the way, the gospel is an opposite of that. Emmanuel, God with us. If God would just say, you know what, people, if you can just climb back here, up here, and see from my perspective, you will be fine. But what Jesus did, born in a manger, look at the things from the way we see things. That is incarnation. The concept of incarnation is mind-blowing to me until I understand that that is the best way to provide pastoral care to those who are in crisis. Incarnation is going down to the level of those who are suffering and see the world from their lens and understand the truth the way they see it. Now, this truth that we love, I think if Satan is quite busy doing things, it's not disrupting the environment, but disrupting the lens and how we see the world and how we see the environment. So, instead of seeing the truth, he injects certain lies. We call them truths. You know, sometimes we no longer know if what we believe is lie or truth. All we know is, based on our lens, and the reality that we see based on our lens, it is the truth. If you remember, in the Garden of Eden, I think the serpent, from a business perspective, the serpent gave Adam and Eve an opportunity to grow. How are you, Eve? Are you satisfied with your situation? Do you want to be someone else? Do you want to be like God? I have an opportunity for you to take. This is the path. If you take this, you will be like God. It sounds like a quite viable and very inviting opportunity. For Eve, never came to her mind that, oh yeah, you know what? Why not try to desire for more? I think that's a good proposition. If I take this apple or whatever fruit, that was, nowadays kids know that to be apple, the forbidden fruit. If I'm going to take this, I'm going to be like God. So what's wrong in that picture? As human beings, especially in the Garden of Eden, God has given Adam and Eve the freedom, wonderful freedom, the freedom to be all they can be. And there's only one restriction. And I'm not quite sure if something is wrong in that fruit. Although God says once you touch it, you would surely die. Well, according to the story, Eve still managed to go to Adam and offer the fruit. I mean, what kind of death is that? And I think it started with the death of how Eve sees things. The introduction is quite appealing, okay? But that is the lens that the serpent gave Eve. Meaning, you're not enough, but you can be more by doing this. And there is that appetite, that desire to be more, to be like God. Satan used the same thing for us today. Satan's doctrine is you are never enough. In fact, he's on the autopilot right now. All you have to do is to be born in this world and go to the church and education system, sometimes even the family system. You know? If you're not careful, it will really steal away God's DNA, the divine image that God has given you as a child. What do I mean by that? In 1 Corinthians 13, faith, hope, and love, these three, they remain. Meaning, it has been there, and it is in here, in us, okay? And they always going to stay there forever, except somehow, living in this very imperfect world, our freedom to love, freedom to hope, and freedom to exercise faith is somehow marred. What do I mean by that? A child, for example. A child's freedom to love. Who taught a child to love? Do you remember, for those who are parents, when your babies were just opening up with their smile and giving everything, their feet and legs, say, love me, love me, love me? Who taught them how to receive love and how to love? It's part of our DNA. Who taught a child to jump in darkness the moment a loving parent would say, son, I got you. I'm here. You don't see me, but I got you. Jump. Who taught a child to trust? No one. It's part of our DNA. We were created in God's image. And God's image is seen in the way we love, we exercise faith, and exercise hope. Hope. A child's ability to be curious because they know that they can grow and deliver. You know, have you heard a children's conversation? You know, today I'm the teacher and you are the doctor. There is no barrier. Everything is possible. Who taught them to believe? Who taught them to be confident? Who taught them to know that they are significant in this world? No one. It's part of our DNA. Now, if you go to school, a naturally curious child would start being treated as if unmotivated individual. If you accomplish something, you'll get A. A good motivation, a letter grade. And sometimes at home, if a child is doing poorly in school, sometimes a parent would say, okay, we'll go to Disney World or Disneyland towards the end of the school year if everything is good. If you can give us, especially Asian background, yeah, A. So what happens to the motivation? It's no longer natural. All we have to do sometimes as human beings is grow in the world of the adults. Love, for example. It's natural for a child to just come and, hug mommy and daddy, and even in the middle of, if there are visitors and but sometimes culture is more important than affection and relationship. Go to your room. We have visitors. A young mind whose natural tendency is to love and be loved would get confused. Okay, if there are people, I can't do love and be loved, or as we grow, you can only be loved if you behave well. Time out if you misbehave. No love if you misbehave. I'm not saying that you give away the importance of discipline. No. But sometimes, here's what I'm saying. Our freedom to love, to exercise faith, and the confidence of hope, they're natural, but because of an imperfect world, they get wounded. When did you start not trusting others? Mistrust is taught. Trust is natural. Loving conditionally is taught. Unconditional love, from a child's perspective, is natural. The confidence and curiosity and motivation, that's natural. Losing motivation, that's being taught. This is how imperfect the world is. Now, one day, Jesus is about to start his ministry. And God the Father showed a wonderful example on how a father and a son relationship should be. And this is expressed in Matthew 3:17. Matthew 3:7, by the way, is the antidote to the prove it culture. I forgot to state this before I go to the verse. In this world of grown-ups, whether it's workplace or school place, and sometimes even home, and sometimes even church, sometimes we have to prove to others before we would be accepted. In school, we have to prove that we're competent to get, certain amount of attention and accolades and affirmation. But the culture is the same in school and sometimes even in home. Prove it. You have to prove it. You have to demonstrate competence. You have to demonstrate certain belief. You have to sometimes I'm talking about in church, before you get accepted and loved, sometimes you have to prove something. But God, in his relationship with his son, right at the baptism, I want to highlight that because this is something, to me, it's mind-blowing as a dad. Okay? So let's go to the verse. The verse says, "This is my son." When Jesus was baptized, there's a big declaration. This is my son. It says, there's no other identity that you'd like to have in this world than a relational identity, that you are God's children. If you are proving to the world that your identity is based on your accomplishment, based on your achievement, based on the accolades you received growing up, maybe because your identity is wounded as a child. Maybe you were hungering after that affection and love from a parent, that if you are not somebody, then you are not loved. The next words in Matthew 3:17 says, "This is my son whom I love." Jesus hadn't done anything yet. He hadn't fed 5,000. He hadn't demonstrated, he didn't turn water into wine. He didn't raise the dead. He didn't heal. There's no something significant that Jesus has done yet. People were just watching. But as far as the Father and the Son relationship, there is no required actions to prove that Jesus should be loved. Because love, as far as the Father is concerned, is unconditional. This is a statement. This is my Son whom I love. And this is the love of the Father. The love that God is giving us is not dependent on our behavior, on our achievement, on our accomplishment. He is love. The Bible says God is love. Amen. So this is my Son whom I love. And then finally, I'm well pleased. Pleased of what? I mean, sometimes a parent is waiting to be pleased by our children's accomplishment. Oh, I'm proud of this my son, I'm proud of my son. He's good in sports, good in academics, good in music. But what if he's not good in music, he's not good in academics, he's good in sports? How can I be pleased? Especially if he wakes up very late in the morning and not even helping us in the house chores. And sometimes he ends up being an eyesore. And we convey the message. You can only be pleasing to the parents' eyes if you're doing something great, something good, something that would produce results. That's how we see the world. Our significance is based on how we deliver. But at the beginning of Christ's ministry, there's nothing yet, but God the Father is already saying, this is my Son, whom I love, and I'm already well pleased. Now, this is what I call God's affirmation of innocent freedom. And innocent freedom is actually the first chapter in my book. I know our time is limited here, so if we are still here at around 6 p.m., maybe I'm still working on other chapters in the book, so please remind me that we have to finish, okay? But this is my Son is, I'm going to emphasize again, is a very important definition of our identity. Our identity is never dependent on our accomplishment. We don't have to do anything before we will be called the children of God. That is the identity that we'd like to embrace because it is in the core of who we are and in the core of God's heart. And just want to remind you that we are loved. We have a home. We belong to God. And this belonging is nothing, it's not anything that we have to purchase. We have to work hard for to get a home. God's heart is already our home. We belong to Him. And finally, our significance is not dependent on anything that is measurable. We don't have to produce, we don't have to accomplish, we don't have to change anything in this world to matter. We already matter in this world. So, if we put this together, this is my Son, that's our identity, whom I love, that's our belongingness, I am well pleased, that's our significance. You know, if I'm the devil, I know how to trick and deceive you guys. I can see how the devil is working to make our world really miserable. All he has to do is insert this world, then prove it. Now that's a different culture. Once says you have to prove it, then that means that's a different lens. That means you're not yet, you don't have the identity yet of being the children of God. You don't have the identity yet or the belonging yet that you are loved and the significance yet that God is pleased with you. Now this is Matthew 3:17. You know what happened in Matthew 4? This is the last verse of Matthew 3. You know what happened in Matthew 4? Anyone? Matthew 4 is when, after the baptism, what happened? The temptation. Okay. I want us to examine how Satan works. Okay? So let's go to temptation. Before we go to temptations, let me just emphasize one thing here. I'd like to put in parallel 1 Corinthians 13 and Matthew 3:17. Okay? Faith, hope, and love. Let me start with hope. This is 1 Corinthians 13:13. Faith, hope, and love. This is God's DNA that remains in us. Hope is a child's ability to deliver. It's natural for a child to dream and to matter in this world. You see a child when they were crying, they demand for milk or attention or love. It's a voice that says, hey, I matter. Where are you? Feed me, love me. It's natural for a child, okay? And a child in return, it's natural for a child to deliver. You know, when you go home and you see a child says, Dad, you know what I discovered? I can do cartwheels now. You know, and there's a joy in that. Imagine that. So a child knows that they are significant. What if we wounded that significance? What if me as a dad coming home so stressed at work, and then I have a lot of things in my mind, and then a child says, Dad, look at me. I can do cartwheels now, and say, go to your room. Don't disturb Daddy. Daddy's busy right now. I'm giving a message that you are not significant enough. Just that energy. Welcome to this imperfect world. And there are much, much more ways on how to wound significance in a child. So the result of that is we form belief because of that. The first one is, well, I'm not pleasing that. I didn't please that. Maybe if I can only be competent, then I can be someone who's significant. I'm the only child. I mean, I'm the only boy in the family, by the way. I have 5 sisters. In our culture, I'm not the oldest. I'm the 4th. But in our culture, the son is the next person in line, to somewhat inherit the authority and the charge for the family. But I'm the 4th, meaning I'm lost. In that culture, I have 3 sisters whose personality is big and strong, that all of them intimidate me. So, my question in my heart is this: can I take Dad's role, especially if Dad is away? If 3 sisters are much, much more stronger, personality-wise, than me, I'm dependent on Dad's endorsement. So I'm getting Dad's attention. Hey, Dad, when are you going to bless me? And tell the family that, I'm your next in line when you're away. But Dad, for some reason, was wounded as a child. He is the oldest, and he has 8 sisters and 1 little brother. Dad, growing up in a home my grandpa back then was alcoholic, never experienced an affection or affirmation or validation from my grandfather. So their relationship is estranged. Now that he has a son, he doesn't know. His reference is so poor. He doesn't know how to play with me. I saw my dad playing with my sisters, but helpless and clueless when it comes to me. So, in other words, I was hungering for Dad's attention, for Dad's affection, for his endorsement and blessing. So what happens? I grew up seeing the world from this perspective. If I want to matter, I need to be competent. If I want to matter, when I do things, it needs to be spectacular. Otherwise, no one would actually recognize me. If I want to matter, maybe I don't matter. So I'm just going to find a place where I'm protected and find a safe, tranquil little space, just like a turtle, just going to hide inside my shell. Where did I get this lens? Some of the things, my parents are very good parents. It's not on what they did to me, it's more on what I haven't experienced from them. It's an imperfect world. Same thing with love. What if love is wounded? What would the picture of that? I form a certain belief if love is wounded. Sometimes this belief would say, others don't love me the way I love them. Because if I'm going to love my parents or my siblings, and in return, I experience bullying or abandonment or betrayal, then my confidence in their love is less than my confidence in loving them. So I don't know if I can trust anybody's love if, in return, instead of love, I experience pain. So, in a relationship, I have this lens. I cannot trust others, therefore, I must have options to mitigate pain. That's one of the lenses I can form if my love is wounded. Or if I've been told that I'm unlovable, I was married to a very beautiful lady. I never realized that she has 4 sisters. She was so beautiful. And then she took me home, introduced me to her sisters. All of them were beauty pageant, little miss towns of their, whatever towns they're from in the Philippines. And the only person who didn't get a chance to be the little miss town is my wife. So she feels she's the ugliest in the family. The mother was always saying, oh, you're the ugliest, you're the ugly duckling, and never experienced the same kind of love, the way her sisters felt, love. It was strange. So, there was a time when she felt like she was unlovable. So if she's in a world where she was unlovable, she learned how to control her environment. She exercised the gift that she has, in terms of being powerful or in control. I mean, if I'm struggling with my significance and I see a powerful lady that can help me with that, I think that's when this attraction started in our relationship. We are both wounded, my friends. I'm not just happy that God is a God of healing, but I'm just going to give you a picture of where we're coming from. And she's also suffering with this. In order for me to enjoy love, I need to be a star. I need to shine. I need to attract people. Because if people aren't attracted to me, maybe that means I'm not lovable. See, these are different kinds of lenses that we can form if we are wounded. So that's in the area of love. And finally, in the area of faith, this is the identity, the way we see ourselves. Faith is the essence of things unseen. But with the things that we see, we have no confidence in the goodness of others and ourselves if our sense of faith is wounded. I'm talking about horizontal here. I'm not talking about vertical. The vertical, that's God's department. Horizontal, that's you and that's our department. How we nurture this relationship. If our sense of identity is wounded, these are the possible lenses that we can form. How can I see the goodness in me if I'm broken? Therefore, I have to mitigate and compensate by being perfect. Anyone here is perfectionist? Okay? Because we're struggling. People might not trust us. if we are not perfect, or we don't trust others, so maybe we have to step up to make things perfect. Another lens that we can form is, I must be virtuous. How can people trust me if I don't have virtue? Pastors and doctors and any other helping ministry or profession is a very good and a very attractive profession for those who are dealing with broken relationship with self in the area of trust. Why? Because if we do good, then people will start trusting us. This is a position of trust. Being a minister, being a doctor is a position of trust. It's a very attractive for people whose confidence and trust in themselves is broken. That's why, sometimes the toxicity in the life of a pastor, sometimes they blame the church. The church is too toxic. It could start from within, Or we have this particular lens that if I can trust my environment, I'm going to find a place where I can depend and I can find stability. It could be church, it could be the military, it could be the big organization, company that I'm part of. It could be, if you don't know Christ, maybe the gangster will do, the fraternity will do. There are a number of people who are quite attracted, and it could be army, it could be, law enforcement, anything that looks strong and firm and stable. There are many people are attracted to stability. Why? Because they are raised and they've been struggling to find stability because they live in a broken world. See, we form these lenses in our mind. This is how Satan works, giving us different kinds of lenses and obscure the truth. That in Matthew 3:17 it says, "You are my child. I love you. I'm already pleased with you. You don't have to do anything." But in a broken world, it seems like we have to purchase using currency of our own virtues and our own perfection and our own achievement to get something in return. So, if we will go to Satan's temptation in Matthew 4, it would look like this. I'm not going to use the chronological presentation of the gospel as far as the temptation of Christ is concerned. I'm going to follow Matthew 3:17 to understand the point today. The first sentence of Satan is this: if you are the Son of God. The proclamation says, "You are my son." Satan only used one word to distort everything. What's that word? If. Meaning, Jesus, you're not yet the Son of God. You have to earn it. And I'm going to give you a way. This is a good business proposition. Is there something wrong for Jesus to turn the stone to bread? Because he fed 5,000 people, excluding women and children, with just, as if the miracle is about the same. It's, there was no fish and bread at that moment, so maybe the stone will do. Don't you think that Jesus can do that? Is there anything wrong if Jesus would turn the stone to bread? That's a gift. That's Jesus' gift. That's his strength. We all have our own strength. We all have our own gift. Some of you are good in music. Some of you are good in leadership. Some of you are good in servant leadership. And some in serving. There is nothing wrong in Jesus' ability to turn the stone to bread. It's a beautiful gift. Satan is not asking us to abandon our gift. Satan is attaching the agenda, the if. That's how Satan works. That's how he distorts our lenses. For those leaders here, What's going to happen to you without leadership? Pastors, who are you if you're not a pastor today? Doctors, who are you if you are not a doctor today? So if you want to matter, if you want to be significant, that's the word if. That's where the if. Then use your gift. If you are, Satan says, the Son of God. Of course, he's the Son of God. But Satan provided Jesus another personality that is hoping that, just like, people, the audience, I'm going to be here for you. If you turn the stone, I'm going to clap my hands, praise you even more. Of course, Jesus knew. Imagine if he wasn't affirmed, maybe there's no roots and basis for Jesus' stability at that moment. But Jesus knew. I'm not gonna, it's a different story to unpack Jesus' response, because they are beautiful. Right now, we're just going to focus on how the devil works in terms of, changing the lens on how we see things. So, that is Satan's strategy. You have to prove it so that you can be the Son of God. Now, let me just emphasize this, and this is the application for us. Our identity comes from our relationship with God. It can't be bought or earned. It shouldn't be used to oppress others. And without it, we shouldn't feel powerless or oppressed. In a culture where we bought this hierarchy, I would be somebody if I have position, if I have money, if I have influence. It's very easy for me to abuse those who don't have that, because that would be the name of the game. And Jesus is teaching us that don't base your significance on the hierarchy and on the power. You will end up abusing others. Base it on the fact that all of us are God's children. The second temptation, now, I'm not following the order, okay? Because I'm just giving you the idea of how the devil might be working in our mind. The other temptation says, still here, if you are the Son of God. Again, the word if is there. Throw yourself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge over you. Now, two things here. The certainty and spectacularity as proof that Jesus is the Son of God. Number one, certainty. That God can keep you safe. Do you know that many people are basing their faith on this particular certainty? That's why when it is no longer certain, they no longer know what to do with their faith. Sometimes we are so attached with the certainty. As simple as, I'm running late, dear God, can you please, keep an open space, parking space close to the door so I won't be late. Oh, thank God. Oh, God is good. God is good. Look, He always takes care of me. There's a good spot. What if there would be days when, not only that, all of a sudden you're hit with 1,000 problems and no answers. And then one big problem, they say, today I have 1,000 problems, then I got sick, now I have one big problem. Sometimes our health, emotionally or physically or mentally, sometimes we are overcome by this illness, and then there's no answer. As if God is not there. Sometimes we get angry, God understands. Because God is not only keeping you on the mountainside. God, according to Psalm 23, there is a valley of the shadow of death. It's a dark valley where you cannot see certainty. But in here, Satan would like to picture, can you give me a God that whatever you do, God is always going to be there? Throw yourself, and it's also in a spectacular way. If you are loved in your family based on provisions and never experience the valleys and the darkness in life, how can you experience and trust that everlasting life when for the first time in your life, now you're experiencing darkness and mama or papa, they are not there? The overprotective kind of love. The Father is not like that. So, brothers and sisters, if you would like to experience love, let's focus on this. Love shines best in the darkest hour, at the edge of the unknown, and in the depth of our uncertainty and isolation. How can you know and say, I love my son, or I love my daughter, I love my spouse, even at the point of death, if you were not given a chance, if you were not given an opportunity to offer your life for them? It's only words. But sometimes we have to go through that darkness to, I never realized I love this much. I can do everything for this person. So that's another point here. And that's finally, this will be the ending, number 3. Significance requires evidence. Okay. Again, there's the word if here. I'm going to go back to the stones and breads here. Just to reemphasize what was in that, in Satan's mind. If you are the Son of God, command these stones and to become bread. Okay. And I think I already covered this. I combined the spectacularity with the certainty a while ago. But have you seen a person, an individual, maybe you don't have to look, maybe look inside of you, that you don't trust that people will recognize or hear your voice unless you deliver well and perform quite well. The insecurity that you're experiencing, you look yourself and you feel like, I'm not in a position to say anything. Maybe if I have the education, maybe if I have the position, and maybe if I have the possessions. And once you have those, then your voice starts becoming louder and stronger in a committee, in a church, in an organization, at work. And if you kind of continue to bite that kind of culture, then your star is going to go up higher and higher until no one's going to listen unless I'm spectacular. I just want to emphasize that because that is Satan's, way of twisting our lens here. So I want to emphasize this. The measure of our worth comes from God's view, not from our desire for recognition. To be truly significant is to embrace the person God intended us to become, regardless of societal expectations. Amen. Please embrace that, because I don't want you being trapped in your own lens, that you are insignificant because you can't deliver anything. This is a very important point. Now, my appeal for you is this. I'm going to bring you back to Calvary. When Jesus was crucified on the cross, even at that moment, people, influenced, of course, by Satan, I can see this happening even today. Jesus was crucified. And these are the people who were following Jesus. These are the people who crossed Tiberias to find Jesus in John 6. They crossed Tiberias Sea looking for Jesus. These are the people who were just singing Hosanna, when Jesus was crossing Jerusalem. These are the people who were devout followers of Jesus Christ. What happens here? What happens in this picture? They can't afford to see a crucified Messiah. They can't. One day I was holding a support group where the pastor and the elder were sitting next to each other. They're good friends. And because it's a support group, the pastor all of a sudden can't help, maybe just overflowing, express vulnerability and problems that he was having in his personal life. The elder couldn't take it. Oh, no, 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 don't do that. You're strong. No, 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 don't do that. You're powerful. You are our pastor. The elder could not allow the pastor to be a human being. Why? Because it would destroy his idea and his understanding of what would keep him stable. The pastor is a symbol of stability. He's been the pastor all his life. He's been the pastor who saved him, in a sense, in many ways and form. Now he's being weak? No, please don't do that. Same thing here, except that a little bit more. Jesus, you said you are the Son of God. Why don't you save yourself? Again, the word if. You have to prove yourself. If you want us to worship you, you have to prove yourself. That's a great temptation for Jesus. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. We can't afford to have a very weak God. What if? That's why I'm asking you. How can you let God be God if this is the God that we are seeing at the moment? If the God that we're hoping to free us from the Roman soldiers and power, all of a sudden the God that we are worshiping is a God is at the hands of tyranny and wickedness. How can he save us? How can we let God be God? We would rather be the God who says, hold on a second. It's like Peter, nothing's going to happen to you over my dead body. So brothers and sisters, we've been living in a culture of this. Both our idealism and the way we see ourselves. We don't want to see something that is beyond what would keep us safe. But the Calvary is a very powerful and profound intervention of God in ways no human being have ever imagined. Because even the cross is not enough to say, you are no longer my child, I no longer love you, I'm no longer pleased with you. Even the cross could not change Matthew 3:17. And what's interesting here is this. If you want to follow Jesus, he's not offering you comfort. In fact, he says, take up your cross. Take up your cross and follow me. Amen. What if your cross is something that you dread? You've been asking for a long time, like Paul. Take this thorn in my flesh away. But what if it stays there? It could be illness. It could be poverty. It could be loss, job, family members. Anything that's painful, too painful. Jesus says, take up your cross. Because even this cross, it will never change. You're still my child, whom I love, and I'm well pleased. God bless us all.